So here's the thing. The year is 2001, and Sega is dying. After the failure of really 2.5 video game consoles, Sega was in a really horrible spot. This wasn't a Wii U or PS3 situation where sales were down, but eventually they found their footing. After Sega Saturn, and especially after the Dreamcast completely flopped, Sega, the entire company, was on the verge of bankruptcy, mainly due to the fact that the PS2 dominated the console market at the time. Basically everyone internally knew that the company was going under. This included Sonic Team, who, 2 years previously, brought Sonic into the realm of 3D gaming with Sonic Adventure, a flawed but solid enough game that went on to become the best-selling game in the console's lifetime, selling a total of 2.4 million copies. That may sound like a lot, but for context, the best-selling game on the PS2 was GTA San Andreas, which sold 17.3 million copies. Still, Sonic Team, Sega, whoever, decided that while this ship was sinking, they might as well go off with a bang. Seeing how Sonic was their mascot after all, a sequel to Sonic Adventure was put into effect. This sequel, while not technically the last game released for it, would end up being the swan song of the Sega Dreamcast. This sequel would end up being one of the last games that Sega would release as a first-party developer. This sequel would end up being one of the most iconic and beloved games in the entirety of the Sonic franchise. This sequel would end up being Sonic Adventure 2. And I have very complicated feelings on this game. Okay, look, I've gotten a few complaints after the Adventure 1 video that I'm an Adventure 1 apologist, and people have been accusing me, before this video came out, that was going to be basically SA1 good, SA2 bad. That's hopefully not what this is going to end up being. At least I want to give it more depth than just saying that. Yes, I will fully admit right now that I do think that Sonic Adventure 1 is the better game, though not without flaws as I mentioned in my last video. But, hopefully, if you're willing to hear me out, even if you disagree with me, you can at least understand my reasoning. Look, we're already off track here, so to give us some sort of structure to work with, I'm going to go through this game as a new player probably would. So get any knowledge of sequels out of your head. No Shadow the Hedgehog, no Sonic 06, no comics. It's 2001, you're an 11-year-old who just got this game. Alright? Okay, let's jam. Also, obviously spoilers ahead for Sonic Adventure 2. Much like Sonic Adventure 1, the game is broken up into multiple stories, though here it's just two, Hero and Dark, and you're able to select either at the start of the game, unlike SA1 which forced you to unlock the stories by playing through Sonic's story. Yes, there's going to be some Sonic Adventure 1 comparisons in this video. What do you expect? It's a direct sequel that I'm pretty sure is running on the same engine. As tempting as it is to control all 300 pounds of Eggman, the game starts us with Hero selected, so it probably wants us to start there. We begin the game following a helicopter flying high over Central City, which is basically San Francisco. This is the first appearance of GUN in the franchise, or the Guardian Units of Nations, a global military group which works to keep order in the world. Kinda like UN Peacekeepers, but if they actually did anything. Turns out they arrested Sonic for something pretty vague, but he immediately breaks out, rips some chunk of metal off the wing, and plunges down to the earth. Yeah! And we get, let's be honest here, the greatest opening a Sonic game ever got.
Attention all units. Suspect seen heading south. Block all major roads and capture the suspect.
Cityscape is iconic for a whole heap of reasons. Obviously, the music is great, and the level design is very fluid. But more importantly, it starts us off on a very high-energy note, compared, again, Sonic Adventure 1. There, you start off with a mediocre boss fight against Chaos, then placed gently into a generic-looking beach level. Here, you're snowboarding down the streets of San Francisco, doing tricks off ramps, crashing into cars and sending them hurtling down the streets like an avalanche, absolutely killing the people inside in the process. You're grinding on rails, running down buildings, flipping around like a gymnast, all the while some 2000s punk song is playing telling you to follow me, set me free, trust me and we will escape from the city. Then suddenly a giant truck appears out of nowhere and starts chasing you down and, hey big. Then before you know it, it crashes into a wall and boom, the level ends immediately afterwards. It's hype as shit! And like I said previously, the level design is great as it makes you feel like you're keeping up at least some momentum, even if you fuck up and end up having to take the lower path. Also, if you noticed, yes, this is the Sonic game which introduced rail grinding, a mechanic which would go on to be a staple of the series. Though funnily enough, this mainstay mechanic only came about because of a brand deal with Soap Shoes, a real-life brand of shoes whose gimmick was that they had a hard plate embedded in the middle of the shoe which allowed you to actually grind with them. I just told you probably the most repeated Sonic fun fact in series history, but it just felt right to acknowledge it. Also, I just gotta admit how weird it is that mechanic that just feels so natural to Sonic as a character only came about because Sega needed some cash to finish this game. But back to the level, I think the setting also helps City Escape stand out. Sonic, ideally, is supposed to stand out from the crowd, not be your typical platformer. So to many people, including me, it just always felt weird that most Sonic games start you off about as basic as you can get, either a grassy green field or a sandy beach area. Nice, comfortable places to ease you into the game. This is kind of why people are getting tired of Green Hill, by the way. Sonic Adventure 2 drops you out of a helicopter into the middle of a city and tells you to get going. This just feels more like how a Sonic game should start. Fast, in your face, and high octane. As for controls, Sonic controls basically the same as he did in Sonic Adventure 1, but with a few notable changes. In my opinion, the worst one is how they changed the spin dash. See, they added this little roll mechanic that you use like 4 times in the entire game, but since it's mapped to the same button as the spin dash now has a delay on it, which makes it much less snappy than Sonic Adventure 1. But the Lightspeed Dash is much more snappy in Sonic Adventure 2, as all you have to do is hit a button and boom, you're off, instead of the whole charge-off thing. So I guess it's fair enough. Still, I'll miss Sonic Adventure 1 Spin Dash because we will literally never see it again. After a boss fight that's pretty easy, we get introduced to the one, the only, Shadow the Hedgehog, who, let's be honest here, enters the series with a pretty boss-ass line.
It all starts with this. A jewel containing the ultimate power.
I should probably mention something. This game has been modded slightly for your enjoyment because the sound mixing in Sonic Adventure 2 is fucking dreadful. I will admit though, there's less mods than in Sonic Adventure 1. But seriously though, Sonic Adventure 2 is infamous for not only having the backing tracks be too damn loud, but for how characters constantly talk over each other and sometimes even themselves. Here's how the modified version of this cutscene plays out.
Wow, he's fast! Hey, it's not his speed, he must be using the Chaos Emerald to warp!
My name is Shadow. I'm the world's ultimate life form. There's no time for games. Farewell!
And here's the original.
Wow, he's fast! Hey, it's not his speed, he must be using the Chaos Emerald to warp!
Shadow. I'm the world's ultimate life form. There's no time for games. Farewell!
The main reason for this is because they didn't animate new cutscenes for the American version compared to the Japanese version, so the voice lines are just kind of slapped on the Japanese ones, which are much shorter. Back to the story, after Shadow demonstrates Chaos Control for the first time, a power which allows people to teleport when using a Chaos Emerald, Sonic realizes that the reason why he was arrested is because
the military has mistaken me for the likes of you!
Such a weird line. Now, this plot point has been, heavily criticized, for good reason, mind you. Sonic and Shadow just don't look alike. And spoilers, but Gun is aware of what Shadow is. We don't know that yet, so shh. I and some others attribute this issue to this plot point being a holdover from Shadow's original design. See, before this fucker was Shadow, he was Terios. Oh my god. Look, you can find a lot of fan art of Terios in his second major design, which seems to have been given the name Umbra, which, I mean, it's the Sonic fandom, we make characters from glitches, but that does mean this design at least has some fans. I, on the other hand, just think it really sucks, and I'm glad we got what we got. But check this out, you can actually track the refinement of Shadow's design when you lay them out like this. You can see things like the progression of his standard shoes to his now more iconic rocket boots, to his metal cuffs eventually transforming into his inhibitor rings, even something as simple as them wanting something distinct on his chest carried over into his final design. You can really see the development from the original idea of darker Sonic to something more distinct, especially with his silhouette, which ironically ended up hurting this plot point, but I guess it worked out in the long run. Also, for some reason, they gave Terios muscles? Yeah. That just doesn't look right. Man, I sure am glad they dodged that bullet. It's a really good thing that this game didn't introduce any weird character designs or anything. After Sonic gets arrested again, we randomly cut to the middle of the fucking desert, where Knuckles is arguing with this game's other new character. Sorry about that, folks. That's my furry bait detector. I got installed for a gag in the Digimon Tamers video for obvious reasons, and I guess it's going off here. Rouge the Bat, originally named Nails, while her concept designs weren't as radically different as Shadow, there were at least some neat ideas here, and at least one thing stayed consistent throughout her many designs. Well, two things. Look, don't get mad at me for that. Look at this shit. Those perverts knew what they were doing. Anyways, Eggman tries to steal the Master Emerald, and then this happens.
What?
So Knuckles sets off to recollect all the pieces of the Master Emerald. And this is where the game starts to take a turn. I liked the Emerald stages in Sonic Adventure 1. They were decent enough and a nice change of pace for the third story of the game. So naturally, you'd think I'd like these too. And I do. At first. Knuckles' first level, Wild Canyon, is fine. See, the Emerald Hunts work the best in small yet open levels. Levels that aren't so big that it takes too long to get from one side to another, while still having a lot of little nooks and crevices where emeralds could be hiding. But this level does show something that is a major issue. Quote me from the last video, these things can be hidden basically anywhere, out in the open, inside enemies, inside props, even underground. Luckily, Knuckles has his trusty emerald radar at the bottom of the screen. The closer you get to one of the emeralds, the faster it beeps. The same concept applies here, but with one major issue. The emerald radar is locked. You can only find the emeralds one at a time. Look at this. There's a Master Emerald shard in this crate here. And I didn't get told anything about it because I didn't get the first emerald. And mind you, these emeralds are placed randomly throughout the stage. Allow me to illustrate how this can be frustrating. Say this is a level, and you spawn here, an emerald spawns here, and another one spawns here. You are directly next to an emerald piece, but this one's the second one, and this one's the first one. First you gotta go all the way over here, find the emerald, and start searching around for that second one. You check over here, and finally you find that it's somewhere you've already checked, because the game hates you, I guess. And also keep in mind there's a third one somewhere else too. You can get why this can be frustrating. It seems like this change only exists to extend gameplay time, which is annoying. Why would you do this? Why? Tell me! Tell me why ain't nothing but a... Luckily, mods come to the rescue yet again, as you can, thankfully, check a single box and boom. Now it's like the last game. Okay, let's balance the scales and give Sonic Adventure 2 a compliment. I like the cheesy rap songs that Knuckles gets in his levels, supplied by rapper Hunted P. Apparently an absolute cunt in real life, but that's not the game's fault.
That's what I'm representing. Never seen a mic hog spit like a menace. Wild canyon fun, I gotta chase a bat, huh? Yeah, Rouge, she's sexy and smooth.
Play that again?
Yeah, Rouge, she's sexy and smooth. A double cross spot thief, that's out for my Jews,
They knew what they were doing. After finishing this level, we jump back to the A-plot of the game, with Tails giving us some exposition as he travels to Prison Island to break Sonic out of jail. Now, I'm not gonna sit here and say that Sonic Adventure 1 is this incredibly interwoven story. Half the time when the stories do intertwine, it tends to feel a little bit forced. But this wasn't trying to be all that intertwined. Each story was unconnected for the most part, and just happened to take place at the same time with only a few crossover moments. Here, they're trying to tell one grand story across the whole game. But Knuckles' B-plot is basically just him wandering around aimlessly for the first half of the game, before he finally joins up with the rest of the crew and just decides to abandon his search for the Master Emerald and tags along with the rest of Team Hero. Ah shit, I need to balance it out again. The voice acting in this game is definitely a step up from Sonic Adventure 1. Dean Bristow, as always, knocks it out of the park here as Eggman, who I stand by has never had a bad voice actor.
Sounds like I like the way you think, Shadow. I will get the Chaos Emeralds. Use the machine to dominate the world.
As does Scott Dreer as Knuckles, which is my go-to Knuckles voice.
I did that to prevent the Master Emerald from being stolen, you idiot. If it's in pieces, I can restore it. And by the way, that's not your emerald.
Ryan Drummond still isn't my ideal Sonic, but he does a fine job and gets to deliver some of Sonic's most iconic one-liners in series history.
You've turned into a big-time villain, Doctor.
Jennifer Dooleyard does a fine job as Amy.
Have no fear. Amy Rose is here.
Even newcomers like David Humphrey as Shadow and Lanny Minella as Rouge do pretty good jobs with the materials they're given.
So you did your homework, is that it? I would say that's an invasion of privacy.
I could say the same thing about you.
Looks like things aren't quite going your way, but since my job was done, I thought it was time to take what's mine and get out of this place.
You are one pathetic creature.
Look who's talking.
It just seems like everyone's a lot more comfortable doing these voices now, compared to the much more stilted deliveries we often got in Sonic Adventure 1. Except for Tails. Holy shit, I do not feel bad saying this. Tails took a massive fucking step down in the voice actor department. Corey Bringus was apparently too old to reprise his role for Sonic Adventure 2, so instead they just got his younger brother Connor to do the job. And while I certainly took some jabs at Tails' voice in Sonic Adventure 1, I think that this is a good example to demonstrate the difference between someone who's a bad voice actor but is trying, compared to someone who's a bad voice actor and isn't even trying.
That was a test run using a new prototype propulsion system. It's got a few bugs to iron out.
I heard the news about it on satellite TV. I still can't believe that Sonic would destroy the military building.
I did it, Sonic!
It has the same wavelength and properties, but it's less powerful than the real one.
This area sure has changed after they built this station.
But how did he manage to harness all that energy?
It's just the exact same monotone delivery throughout the entire game. This is why you don't cast children to voice act for children. They're not going to be very good and they'll grow out of it. Tails is surprised to see Amy of all people at Prison Island, and she's not exactly in the best spot right now, so he hops in to deal with it.
I miss my wife, Tails. I miss her a lot.
Turns out, Amy somehow managed to also break into Prison Island. Imagine 5 different people breaking into Alcatraz at once, except Alcatraz looks like this. Amy and Tails team up to free Sonic from his prison because they both agreed he probably didn't do it, and we got our first Tails stage. It's Diet Gamma from Sonic Adventure 1. The basic concept is here. You go through levels chain together attacks by locking your beam onto enemies and then having your auto fire take care of them. But change number 1, instead of the usual ring system where if you get hit you lose your rings but you're safe so long as you at least have 1, here they implemented a health bar which refills a bit with every ring you get. I'm not entirely sure how I feel about that, to be honest. Number 2, the mechs move much slower than Gamma did, which sucks, but whatever. And 3, chain together attacks is kinda useless now outside of the score. In Gamma's stages, you needed to chain together attacks in order to delay the timer, which was constantly counting down. It gave you a reason to use the mechanic. Here, there really isn't anything beyond just it being hard as hell to hit stuff with your regular bullets, which weren't even a thing in the first game thinking back. It's slow, it's clunky, it's not very fun. I've also heard complaints about the constant buzzing of the targeting system. I have a high annoyance tolerance, but I can see how it can be grating on people. Tails actually doesn't have anything to do with the proper breakout scene at all, as somehow, Amy managed to swipe a card which allows her to break Sonic out herself. She also tipped Sonic off to the fact that Shadow was somewhere on the island, with Sonic being eager to kick his ass after their last encounter. Much like Sonic Riders of all things, I like that Sonic only gets into this adventure not to save the world, but to settle a grudge with someone who was an ass to him. We get another pretty good Sonic level, which also introduces us to that new version of the Lightspeed Dash. Finally, Sonic and Shadow meet and we get this iconic exchange.
I found you, Faker.
Faker? I think you're the fake hedgehog around here. You're comparing yourself to me? Ha! You're not even good enough to be
I'll
my
make you eat those words.
After a pretty mediocre boss fight, hi Big, we learn that the island is rigged to explode, and everyone escapes as it happens. There were people on that island. It was a fully functional prison with guards and prisoners and shit. How many people just died? Also, Knuckles is fucking around at Pumpkin Hill. Suddenly, Eggman hacks into every television in what would be named the United Federation, basically Sonic Universe's version of America. He then demonstrates the power of this wacky new egg weapon called the Eclipse Cannon by blowing up the fucking moon.
How do you like that, Obama? I'm pissed on the moon, you idiot!
Okay, that's the last Snapcube reference, I promise. Also, Amy apparently didn't know that breaking someone out of prison is illegal.
The 3 of you? That means me too! Hey, wait!
Also, let's just take a second to appreciate this wanted poster for Tails. Despite that fun little detail, this level is slow and clunky, but with the added issue of random bullshit just sort of happening. Meanwhile, Knuckles goes through a fucking terrible level, Aquatic Mine. While the central area is open, you will eventually have to travel into these tight, claustrophobic mineshaft areas. Also, don't forget to grab the air necklace. You're gonna want it for later on in the game. After this level, Knuckles finally enters into the story and, like I said, just drops everything to hang out with the rest of Team Sonic. Tails drives off in order to track down the President in an honestly kind of fun driving segment. After tracking down the President, Tails and Sonic just kind of hop into his limo as he's discussing surrender to Eggman, and Tails uses their video call to track Eggman down to something called the Space Colony Ark. So after a boring Tails level, a decent Sonic level, and a fucking awful Knuckles level where we completely abandoned the level design that made the Emerald Hunt stages fun, and instead get 3 small rooms connected by tight hallways and 1 kinda big room in the center, we get 2 boss fights in a row, where Knuckles fights a ghost and, hey big, Sonic fights a giant statue. Finally, we get on that space shuttle and launch into the Space Colony Ark. Not even the mods could fix this scene.
Is everyone alright? We should be landing soon.
The hatch doors are open. Don't sweat it, Knuckles. The only thing in the cargo bay are those
What do you
Master
mean,
Emeralds.
don't sweat it?
Right?
Land the
Knock
shuttle
it
and
off,
let me
Knuckles.
out.
We're gonna crash this thing if you keep that up. Oh no! Don't touch that lever! Whoa!
So we finally start to get some pieces put together here. The Space Colony Ark was apparently a futuristic floating super science base up in space, but something mysterious and terrible happened 50 years ago that caused it to get shut down. I just imagine every Sonic fan watching this just rolling their eyes because I'm trying to keep up this whole mystery angle, but literally the plot to the next 4 games are predicated entirely on the events of this one, so everyone knows what it is. Fun fact time, in the English dub, Tails says,
The first Bernoulli spherical space colony, called ARK.
This actually isn't technobabble, as Daniel Bernoulli was an actual Swiss scientist whose biggest discovery was the Bernoulli principle, which states, simplified, that if you make a pipe's hole shrink, the water traveling through the pipe will speed up. I actually learned about this because strongman lore time, I was actually a physics major back in college for a little bit. Anyways, this has nothing to do with what Tails is talking about. This is a translation error. What they meant to say, and what he says in the Japanese version, is the Bernal spherical space colony, an actual theoretical concept thought up by John Desmond Bernal, which was a spherical space station meant for permanent habitation. I can't find any evidence for this, but I feel like it's possible that this also went on to inspire the Halo rings from, well, Halo. Don't say I never taught you anything. Tails has made a fake Chaos Emerald which, I quote, has the same wavelengths and properties, but is less powerful than the real one. The plan is simple. Since the Eclipse Cannon is being powered by 6 of the 7 Chaos Emeralds, all Sonic has to do is put the fake emerald in the slot saved for the 7th, and it'll cause the cannon to self-destruct. Tails does something, I guess, but then surprise, something happened to Amy. We then cut to Knuckles, who isn't a part of the plot anymore. He goes through Meteor Herd, which is the 2nd worst level in the game because it's fucking gigantic. Even with the Emerald Radar unlocked, this took me 8 minutes and 21 seconds. Rouge and Knuckles duke it out, but after Rouge trips and almost falls in the lava like a dumbass, Knuckles saves her, and they kinda start forming something.
Keep your hands to yourself.
I gotta admit, their childlike bickering, despite them both canonically being adults, is kind of adorable.
Fine, then just take them. They stink like echidnas do.
If that's what you thought, you should have given me them in the first place.
Rouge gives back the emerald shard she took, Knuckles apologizes, and she gives him a little smirk. It's cute. Meanwhile, Sonic is rushing to Amy and Tails after, apparently, Eggman got the upper hand. Throughout this level, we hear Eggman talking over the PA system, and some of the shit he says is grim.
You're too slow! Sonic, if you don't come here, she will die!
Like, goddamn. That being said, despite my praise to Dean Bristow, everyone in this game has some bad lines, and this one always makes me laugh because of how awkward it sounds.
Well done, Sonic, but you'll never leave this room alive! Ha-ha!
Why does he laugh like that? So Sonic makes it to what I assume is the bridge, where we see Eggman has taken Amy hostage, and they want to have a prisoner exchange, Amy for the emerald. Sonic thinks he's slick and decides to give him the fake emerald, and he gets another very iconic line.
You've turned into a big-time villain, Doctor.
But oh no, it was a trap!
You thought you could trick me with that fake emerald, didn't you?
So, how did you know it wasn't the real one?
Tails!
Because you just told me. box, boy. Now for a little space ride. The capsule clears the colony bare.
Realizing that Chaos Control is the only possible escape from this, Sonic decides that he'd be better off trying than dying. We then see the capsule explode, and, inspired by Sonic's possible death, Tails kicks the shit out of Eggman. Obviously, Sonic doesn't die, and after recollecting himself, he realizes he's only got a few minutes left before the Eclipse Cannon is set to fire. With the fake emerald in hand, his only chance now is to slam dunk it in there! And off we go into the final rush. It's a fine final level, keeping up the same mentality of past Sonic levels with good momentum and a sense of speed. Also, I just want to gloat for a second. Check out this cool ass skip that I can do. See, that's the kind of stuff that makes Sonic games fun. Did I have to do that? No. But I could, and it feels cool to pull off. We get the final boss of the hero campaign, Shadow. For that, though, we get yet another iconic scene of these two egotistical assholes interacting. Everything about this scene is rad. The dialogue between these two is a rare high, the music is fitting, even the direction, with the two slowly building up in speed as their conversation goes on, ramping up the tension until finally...
I can't let you live. Your adventuring days are coming to an end.
It's a good scene. Unfortunately, the boss fight isn't. What's supposed to happen is that you wait for Shadow to do their special attack, dodge it, and then attack them. But you need to make sure not to run at top speed, because if you overtake them, then they have to use Chaos Control to get ahead of you. But they're not running at top speed all the time, I think. So it's very easy to overtake them. There are times where I would just keep running, and they would just keep falling behind me. Back on the bridge, Amy and Tails are surprised to receive a call from Sonic since they think he's dead. As Eggman, clearly in pain, reaches for the real emerald, Sonic managed to successfully sabotage the Eclipse Cannon, rendering it useless. Tails and Amy watch this, so they don't really see what's happening. Sonic, how did you get there? Well, that's the hero story of Sonic Adventure 2. It's a decent enough story, though certainly some characters are more important than others. At the very least, everyone did something. I know that's low-hanging fruit, but given Generations and Frontiers, that is technically praise for this franchise. Sonic and Tails lead, but Amy helped Sonic break out of prison and Knuckles helped them out in the desert. That's about it, though. But there are a few things that were unexplained. Who is this mysterious Shadow? What happened on the Ark? Are we just gonna overlook the fact that Eggman collected 6 of the emeralds in the background? Well, that's where the dark story comes in.
Eggman steals the research from a military base located on an island to the south. The military's top-secret weapon, Shadow, sealed in the space colony Ark, the 7 Chaos Emerald. When all of the keys have been collected, world conquest will be at hand. Sonic Adventure 2. The Dark Side Story. Long live the Eggman Empire.
Well, for starters, if you want to see a competent Eggman, here you go. Guy breaks into Prison Island all on his own, delving into the deepest levels of the base. This is also where you learn that the gameplay experienced by the 3 heroes is basically the same as the 3 villains. Eggman is just Tails in the mech stages, Shadow is just Sonic in the speed stages, and Rouge is just Knuckles in the Emerald Hunt stages. We won't bother going over their gameplay. The quality of level design is also about the same for each of them, though unfortunately Rouge only gets 1 good level. In the deepest pit of Prison Island, Eggman finds a mysterious console, with an equally mysterious password.
Password is Maria. Maria.
Slowly, a cryogenic casket rises into the air, before finally Shadow breaks out, now free from containment. After defeating a mech that came down to stop them, Shadow tells Eggman to meet him on the Space Colony Ark, before leaving to steal the Green Chaos Emerald from the Central City Bank. In the context of the hero story, gun mistaking Shadow for Sonic is silly, but in the dark story, it genuinely breaks any suspension of disbelief. Gun knows what Shadow is. They had him in prison, and they also absolutely have cameras across the building. Surely they would know that he was missing. This has given way to a fan theory that Gun did know that it was Shadow the entire time, but they captured Sonic as a sort of cover-up, since the whole Ark disaster in Project Shadow was top secret. It's flimsy, but I could see it working if handled correctly. After that, we get our first Rouge level, which they gave her jiggle physics. They knew what they were doing. Then we get a whole level that's effectively just Eggman walking into his base. And once inside, Eggman catches a news broadcast telling about how the police are trying to capture Shadow, who then goes on a little bit of a rampage. Before that, we get a flashback that gives us some clues as to what exactly happened on the Ark disaster Tails talked about earlier.
Find them before they escape!
Maria! I still remember what I promised you. For the people of this planet, I promise you. Revenge!
Yeah, that happens. Meanwhile, Rouge breaks into Eggman's base in another terrible level, and uses the teleporter that he has to teleport to the Ark, where Eggman is currently. Oh god, his arms look so fucked up when he's holding onto a rope. Eggman makes his way to the central control room, Hi Big, where he, Shadow, and Rouge agree to team up. It's actually never explained how Shadow got here, come to think of it. After agreeing to team up, the plan is hatched. While Team Dark already has 3 of the other Chaos Emeralds, 3 more are being held on Prison Island for some reason. So they're gonna go in there, steal everything, and blow it up just to be assholes, I guess. Something you may have noticed by now is how odd some of the cutscene animations can be. Well, that's actually because a lot of the cutscenes were animated through motion capture of all things. I couldn't find any footage of this game specifically, so here it is in Metal Gear Solid 3. Basically, for those who don't know, actors are rigged up in a way that they're sort of wearing their 3D models as digital suits, so to speak. Every action the actors make, the characters make too, at least in terms of body language. When done with human characters, it can work well in giving them more natural movement. Keyword, human characters. Maybe it's just down to the way that the process was used, but the motion capture in this game just ends up making the characters look really goofy half the time. It stands out. Sonic 06 of all games actually did the same thing, and it just looks a lot more stiff than I really think these characters should be. I'm not going to compare this to Sonic Unleashed because, holy shit, but even games like Heroes or Adventure 1 even every now and then, it just looks more fluid to me and I prefer it that way. This is also why, if you pay attention, most of the cutscenes in this game that aren't pre-rendered are just 2 or 3 characters standing around talking to each other, and that's it. And besides, motion capture is done to make the characters look more natural. There's nothing natural about these guys whatsoever. I'd be shocked to hear if they even had bones in their arms and legs. Just before Prison Island blows up, Rouge fucks up because she somehow got herself locked in the vault. Shadow is about to leave her for dead, but...
Shoot, troublemaker.
Shadow rushes off through the jungle to save her and, Hi Big, saves her at the last second using Chaos Control. Back on the Ark, after a flashback to Shadow hanging out with Maria, showing us how close they really were, Rouge and him have a pretty typical anime-style conversation. From here on, the plot mostly follows beats of the hero campaign, though there are a few added details we get. Most importantly, Rouge is actually a double agent working for the government. Apparently, they pay her in jewels. Also, Rouge gets a driving level where she's tailing Tails, and for some reason his coloring is all off. Look how dark they made his fur, he looks like Western Tails, goddamn. Eventually, we learn that Rouge wasn't just sent to spy on Eggman, but to gather intel on Project Shadow, a project put together in order to create artificial life. Not just any artificial life, the ultimate life form. I guess after the Ark was shut down, the government just didn't bother collecting any of its data. Anyway, she finds this thing. Project Shadow. Project Shadow. Top secret. Confidential. Eyes only. Super confidential. Urze. She then gets distracted. We get the worst level in the whole game because it's just Meteor Herd, but bigger. And then she fights Knuckles. You know, I just realized something. Every other character fights their counterpart twice, whereas Knuckles and Rouge only fight once. Wonder why that is. I also wonder why Knuckles can fucking summon lightning. Anyways, we already saw this part. Rouge gives back the emeralds, they're cute together. Big, what the hell are you doing? We also see that Eggman was able to detect both yellow Chaos Emeralds, which is how he knew that there'd be a fake one. That's nice. After a bit, Rouge attempts to steal the Chaos Emeralds before she's confronted by Shadow. She then pulls an Uno reverse card and confronts him with the research that she found on the Ultimate Lifeform. Again, this thing, asking,
But if this picture is of the real ultimate life form named Shadow, then exactly who or what is standing in front of me?
Shadow proclaims that he's still Shadow, and then fucks off to fight Sonic. Though this scene does raise an important question. Is this guy the real Ultimate Life Form, or was Shadow just made later on for the sake of carrying out some evil plot?
You're a beta male, Sonic.
I said no more Snapkey references, that was Jet. I will admit, I do like that regardless of who wins and loses the Eggman vs. Tails fight, both stories make it possible for Eggman to get the last emerald. If he wins, well, he wins. But if he loses, like I said previously, we get this shot of him snatching it up anyways. Though it is pretty obvious that the hero campaign is the one that's canon because I'm pretty sure Shadow was trying to kill Sonic. Either way, Eggman puts the Chaos Emerald in the Eclipse cannon and starts laughing maniacally. However, there's a warning on the screen. Immediately cut to credits. It ends so abruptly, and I guess we do know what that little danger signal means. Like I said, the hero story is the canon one, and we saw Sonic destroy the Eclipse cannon. Or...
The ultimate life form. Chaos vengeance.
Space
Desperation. Supersonic collision. Untamed power of chaos.
Professor Gerald,
The truth about 50 years ago.
Sonic Adventure 2. Last episode. Wishes are eternal.
What? Yes, much like Sonic Adventure 1, after beating all the other stories of the game, you unlock the last story. We start off in the bridge, presumably the one with Amy and Tails on it, as Sonic and Knuckles run in just as the Ark starts shaking violently. Rouge informs our hero team that she got a message from the government saying that the Ark is hurtling towards Earth. Suddenly, every screen, not just in the Ark, but across the whole world, is suddenly hacked, now showing the face of Gerald Robotnik, Eggman's grandfather, the head of Project Shadow, and grandfather to Maria Robotnik. Ah, the pieces are kind of starting to fit into place now, aren't they? He proclaims that the Ark will crash into Earth and destroy it, getting revenge on everyone who took Maria away from him.
The space colony Ark will impact the Earth in 27 minutes and 53 seconds. All of you will be destroyed.
Is this racist? Yeah, Maria's fucking dead. Gerald made this program impossible to stop once put into effect. Eggman struts in and gives everyone a copy of Gerald's diary, where we finally get the truth as to what happened on the Ark. Turns out, creating the Ultimate Life Form didn't fly with the Truman administration, so Gunn was sent in to shut everything down. Multiple scientists were killed in the process, the prototype for the Ultimate Life Form was just sort of left there to die, and more importantly, Maria was shot and killed by a gun agent as she sent Shadow to Earth to hopefully escape from the government. This obviously didn't work. Gerald survived the assault, but was arrested and put on Prison Island. In fact, his cell is literally the exact same one that Sonic ends up in. There, he was put to work while the government covered up what they did by claiming a horrible accident happened. All of this combined together to make him lose his mind. It's not really made clear what the government had him do, but in the background, he clearly coded this program to happen, while also adjusting Shadow and the prototype a little bit. Or maybe creating Shadow? Eventually, though, he was put on the firing line and... well... alright, we're starting to get a little bit grim here. I don't want to get too deep into this because a sizable amount of my next video will talk about this more in detail, but I do believe that not all children's media needs to be entirely sanitized. You can have stuff for kids that deals with more grim or serious material. But... government conspiracies, an officer shooting an unarmed child... this... I think it just crosses a line. That being said, Sonic 3, you better kill this bitch. Eggman got a hold of his grandpa's diary, which told him that Shadow could be released to spread chaos, but in his own words, he didn't know that it was going to go like this. And based on what we saw in the Dark story, that's kind of true. Nothing is more true to Eggman's character than blindly rushing into something without a properly staged plan. The Ark is headed straight for the Earth, and they're the only ones who can stop it. The remaining heroes, Tails, Eggman, Rouge, Knuckles, and Sonic, make a plan to rush to the central engine of the Ark, use the Master Emerald that Knuckles just finished putting back together to yank control away from the Emeralds, and put the ship back into a safe orbit. Hey look, Knuckles is finally important to the plot. Also, holy shit, I know the Master Emerald changes in size every now and then, but damn, And yes, this does mean for the first time, Eggman and Sonic are forced to team up. This would end up being a trope throughout the series, even in the comics. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. As everyone scrambles for the engine in a level where we play through the different gameplay types one at a time, Amy, who wasn't included in the plan, stumbles across Shadow. Thinking back to the fact that she complained a lot in this game, which she has been, she realizes that she's supposed to be a hero too, and decides to try and win Shadow over. We get an honestly pretty decent conversation between the two, complete with what I think is Shadow's best line delivery in the game.
It's all going according to plan. There's no reason for me to help them. Besides, there's no way to save anyone.
It's not as bombastic or memorable as his more iconic lines, but the fact that it's so understated is why it works. Amy gives a passionate plea to Shadow, begging him to help the others, to give the people on Earth a chance to live a happy life. This jogs Shadow's memory of Maria's final words, which were about the same thing, and he realizes he's gotta fix shit. Out of all of the scenes in this game, this is the one that would absolutely need to be addressed if we ever got the Adventure remakes. It seriously comes across like he just forgot, like an idiot. Great job, dumbass. He also comically lets out a single tear, which, like, I can't explain why that's so funny to me. I think we just have to stop making Sonic characters cry. Do I need to remind you about the cum face? I will not give context for that. It's not nearly as bad as it sounds, trust me, but I refuse to explain myself. Just then, Sonic and Knuckles make their way to the central engine, which is strangely designed after the Master Emerald Shrine in Sonic Adventure 1, which seems to be an intentional callback. Suddenly, the prototype appears, and here we get an official name for the thing, the Bio Lizard. Shadow shows up to fight it, and I like that Sonic doesn't even question it. Like, yeah bud, have fun! Shadow does eventually defeat the Bio Lizard, and Knuckles slams the Master Emerald into its rightful place. He recites the prayer from Sonic Adventure 1, again a nice little callback, and uses the Master Emerald to stop the ship. Then, the Bio Lizard Chaos controls the fuck out of there, fusing with the Ark, now determined to crash it into the Earth. With only 5 minutes left before it's all over, Sonic and Shadow are forced to pull together and use the Chaos Emerald to transform into Super Sonic and Super Shadow. And we get, let's be honest here, the greatest ending a Sonic game ever got. Unlike Sonic Adventure 1, where Super Sonic controls just like Sonic, here, Super Sonic and Super Shadow control differently since we're flying around and shit. The joystick controls your movements, one of the buttons makes you ascend and the other makes you descend. For the longest time, I didn't know you could just hold them, I thought you had to mash it, which meant that the boss took me way longer than it had to. Just focus on dodging the Bio Lizard's attacks and hit the swelling spot. With every hit he takes, you swap over to a different character. You can also swap over to a different character by just flying past him, which is good to do in case you're running low on rings. I'll talk more about what makes this scene specifically so hype in the plot dissection part of this video, which we'll get to in a moment. After defeating the Bio Lizard, Sonic and Shadow pool their powers together and use Chaos Control to teleport the Ark back to a safe distance from Earth. Unfortunately, maybe due to his lack of experience with the super form, maybe due to being distracted with Maria, or maybe just due to taking too much damage in the fight, Shadow is unable to keep going, and he falls right down to Earth. In his final moments, he's comforted with the idea that this is what Maria would have wanted. Sonic returns to the Ark and silently gives everyone the bad news. He hands Rouge his inhibitor rings, and when asked what he thinks of Shadow, he says,
"He was what he was, a brave and heroic hedgehog who gave his life to save this planet. Shadow the Hedgehog."
We then get a little denouement with every character. Knuckles and Rouge flirt a little bit, Eggman gives my favorite line from him in this entire franchise.
As a child, I looked up to my grandfather because of all the great things he accomplished in his life. He was my hero, and I wanted to be a great scientist like him. But did he really mean to destroy us?
Followed by Tails being an idiot.
I don't know, but what I do know is we all did it together!
And we see Sonic thinking on his own on Shadow, but when Amy asks what's on his mind, he just says it's time to go home. The final thing we see is Sonic saying goodbye to Shadow, using the exact same words that Maria did when she sent him down to Earth to begin with.
Sayonara, Shadow the Hedgehog.
And that's the story of Sonic Adventure 2. Let's do an autopsy. I think that Sonic Adventure 2 has the best Sonic story, though it's told in the worst possible way. For starters, let's get some elephants out of this room. Firstly, despite being the main character of the series, it's important to note that Sonic is not the main character of this game. Shadow is. That's going to be important later. Secondly, let's answer some lingering questions that weren't answered in the game, but instead through either later games or supplemental material. I know it sucks, but we're just going to have to do it. So firstly, why the hell was Maria on the Ark to begin with? Well, the answer to that is simple.
I have AIDS.
Okay, technically it's NIDS, Neuroimmune Deficiency Syndrome, but it's basically just AIDS. However, the high-tech hospital on the Ark, along with it being low gravity apparently, kept her safe from her disease. This also explains why Gerald was so interested in creating life. It's a bit of a stretch, but his thought process was if he could unlock the mysteries of life, then he believed he might be able to find a way to create a sort of panacea, or at the very least cure Maria so she could go down to Earth, which she longs for. As for the mystery of is Shadow the ultimate life form, or the idea that his memories aren't real, that's not really something that gets followed up on, for the worst mind you. The main theme of the game's story is accepting the past and moving on. The two main antagonists, Shadow and Gerald, are simply unable to move on from their tragedy. Now obviously the game isn't saying that they shouldn't be upset about what happened, they should be, but their anger festers inside of them and drives them to nearly ending the world, a fantastical exaggeration of the real pain that some people can go through when they are unable to move on from tragedy. Now this gets kinda shaky with Gerald since he was in prison for all of his life, but as for Shadow, he's free. He could theoretically just go off and do whatever the fuck he wants. But that hatred, that anger, that drive to avenge Maria's death forces him to, well, do this. To Shadow, nothing else matters.
And I will fulfill my promise to Maria. That's the only thing that matters to me now.
Of course, the great irony of this is that it's the last thing that Maria would have wanted. She sent Shadow down to Earth in hopes that he'd keep it safe, not destroy it. But Shadow's an idiot, and he forgot, so yeah, things kind of start falling apart. At least that's how it comes across in the English version. That's right, shitheads, I went the extra mile here and watched the entirety of Sonic Adventure 2 in Japanese.
見つけたぜこの偽物野郎
偽物フェイクは君の方じゃないのか
In fact, some of the more diehard fans may have already noticed this, as in the background of this video, I snuck a few clips of the Japanese in. Why?
Because fuck 'em, that's why.
As I mentioned quite a bit in this channel now that I think about it, dubbing is a very precarious job. You need to really walk that line between following the original script as close as possible, while still deviating enough to make it palatable for the audience you're dubbing for. Sonic Adventure 2's dub is okay. It's serviceable. Most of the changes are done to make the dialogue either sound better in the English, or just more snappy. It may be my dumb American brain, but
your adventuring days are coming to an end.
It's just more intimidating than There are, however, moments where the dub totally falls flat. The most pointed to example is at the end, when the Bio-Lizard uses Chaos Control. In the English version, Shadow says,
"Is that what Chaos Control is?"
When originally he was just shocked to see that it could use Chaos Control. Also, one last thing before we get back to dissection, they're more clear on what the fuck is going on in the hero story's ending. Sonic is rushing to the barrel of the cannon, where he's going to clog the cannon up with the fake emerald like a Looney Tunes skit. However, by far, the biggest change in the game's dub is Shadow. It seems like Shadow is more nihilistic in the Japanese version. He has shades of that in the English version, but it's more overt in the other translation. For example, in the scene where Rouge confronts him about his memories potentially being fake, in the English dub, Shadow responds with,
"Even if my memories are not real, it's still me, Shadow."
It comes across almost like he's holding onto his hope that he is the ultimate life form, whereas in the Japanese version,
たとえ僕の記憶がフェイクだとしても、僕にとってはそれが全てだ。彼女はマリアの願いを叶える。ただそれだけ。
It's a lot more cold. He doesn't care if he is or isn't Shadow. All that matters is avenging Maria. It's little touches like that that just sort of build up. All of this culminates in the scene with him and Amy. The scene is set up the same. Amy realizes that she has to do something. She talks to Shadow, who is remarkably calm since he believes his work is done, and she gives him a speech about how the people of the world are flawed but still good and deserve to live. But there's a key difference here. Maybe it's just the minor changes in dialogue. Maybe it's just the fact that they reincorporated that whole wish thing that he said to Eggman at the start of the game, but it comes across less like Shadow forgot what Maria said, and more that he just didn't care. And if that's the case, then it changes some things. Shadow isn't an idiot who just forgot what Maria asked him to do. He's someone who is so blinded by rage, who fully believes that his anger is the only purpose to his life, that he is ignoring Maria's last request. This ties in much better to the themes that the game have been building up to at this point. His inability to let go and move on has caused him to do something that Maria would hate, and only now, at this point, when he's finally calmed the fuck down, and when hearing the words of Maria echoed through Amy, that he's finally able to realize just how badly he fucked up. I might be reaching here with this one, but that even makes the fucking tear make more sense if that's what they were going for. It's even more fitting that now, after he finally lets go of that anger, that he's able to conquer the bio-lizard and prove, so to speak, that he is the ultimate life form. It's a shame that the English dub fucked this up and made this character look a lot dumber than I think they were hoping for. And now we reach Live and Learn. The song, aside from just generally kicking ass, is essentially a microcosm of the game's themes. Firstly, I need to give a mention to the tone of the song. Previous and future Sonic Final Boss music is generally more upbeat, a sort of, hey, you can do this type song. Open Your Heart, and even later songs like What I'm Made Of, Endless Possibilities, and even I'm With You from Frontiers, are all upbeat hype songs meant to give you strength to see it through to the end. Live and Learn is, however, much more dour. But you can't save your sorrow. You paid in trade. When you can't help but follow, but you're right back where you came. It fits into the fact that, again, this whole game is somewhat of a shift tonally in the franchise. Not as drastic as some people may believe. It wasn't like jumping from Sonic Heroes to Shadow the Hedgehog, but as I mentioned earlier, this game gets pretty grim. Hell, the stakes are pretty high compared to most games. If Sonic loses in Sonic 3, Eggman gets away with the Master Emerald again. But they'll keep going and they might get it back from him. If Sonic loses in Sonic Adventure, Chaos will just have to be resealed in the Master Emerald. If Sonic loses in Sonic Adventure 2, everyone on Earth dies. There's only one part of the song that actually tries to give some hope to the situation, during the bridge. There's a face searching far, so far and wide. There's a place where you dream you never find. Hold on to what if, hold on to what if. And then there's the chorus. Live and learn, hanging on the edge of tomorrow. Live and learn from the works of yesterday. Live and learn, if you beg or if you borrow. Live and learn, you may never find your way. This chorus, again, perfectly goes out of its way to encapsulate Shadow's arc. Hanging on the edge of tomorrow from the works of yesterday. Shadow is eternally tethered to the past, with his every action being controlled by what happened decades ago. If you beg or if you borrow, you may never find a way. Repeats the same notion, though this time directed at us. It's a warning to us. All the while, the game's main thesis is being screamed at us. Live and learn, a phrase that means to live your life and learn from the mistakes of yours and others to live a better life. Live and Learn is iconic not just because it's a hype-ass moment, or because the song kicks ass, but because the song isn't just, hey, here's some cool lyrics like most Final Boss songs. It ties into the themes of the story in a really good way. Is it a fantastic story? No. Despite how much I hype it up here, it's clunky at times, and it gets a bit too dark at points. But I can appreciate it for its ambition, and its attempt to tell a story with more substantial themes than your typical lighthearted children's affair. But this ain't no Pixar, I can tell you that much. As for just why this game is so grim, I think we can tie that back into what I said at the beginning. Sega was dying. no one thought that the company would make it past the Dreamcast. Hell, Sega had to fucking advertise a shoe in the game in order to afford getting this game out at all. I think that the somber mood that must have been felt at Sonic Team at the time must have snuck its way into the game. It makes sense to me, at least. So, did they at least put out this amazing swan song? No. Look, here's the thing about Sonic Adventure 2. It has some of the highest highs in the franchise. The speed stages are great, the music's top-notch all across the board, the plot is ambitious, and it has some of the most iconic and memorable lines and scenes in the franchise's history. But the story's still clunky and flawed, the translation is terrible, and 2/3 of the game just sucks to play. And yet, there are still people out there who genuinely believe that this is one of the best, if not the best game in the series. It's like Ocarina of Time. It's something that's been said for so long that it's just accepted as fact, even though Twilight Princess and Wind Waker are both 10 times better. I've just seen so many times where people proclaim that Sonic Adventure 2 is the best, they play it, love City Escape, and then give up around Prison Lane, the first Tails level, and never pick the game back up. Yes, City Escape is great, but I hate that it's in a game where the majority of the levels do not play like City Escape. I also think that Sonic Adventure 2 overshadowing a lot of the other games in the series tends to hurt the series in the long run. To share a long-winded anecdote, I once saw a video from Salt Factory called Are Sonic Games Actually Good? It's about a guy who isn't into Sonic playing a handful of the games and sharing his thoughts on them. Despite the title being a little bit clickbaity, it's honestly a video I'd recommend, if nothing else because it's always nice to hear opinions that differ from the fandom hive mind. The list of games were a bit too classic heavy if you ask me, but he did play Sonic Adventure 2, and in it, he says this.
The worst part about the Tails part of the game isn't the fact that you're confined to this bulky, noisy pile of trash, but the fact that the game then throws it back in your face when you do the Chow Garden stuff by showing you that, hey, look, Tails can fly, but we totally didn't think to build any sort of gameplay around that mechanic.
And I just wanted to reach through the screen and say they did! It's just in Sonic Adventure 1! I know I'm gonna get accused of dick-riding Sonic Adventure 1 in this video, but I criticized that game quite a bit in the last video. But I just think that not only did it do 2 of the 3 main gameplay mechanics seen in Sonic Adventure 2 better, but I also think that the structure of the game was better. Separating the different styles into different stories, as I said in that video, makes the game feel a lot more like 6 smaller games rather than 1 big game. But it's 6 consistent small games. I hate how literally every level of this game swaps around gameplay styles. I'm not gonna say it's disorienting, obviously, but it's a total pace killer. This game is the reason why everyone started saying that Sonic's friends are dragging down the series. Okay, that's not entirely true. But it certainly retroactively added fire to the argument. At the end of the day, Sonic Adventure 2 is a heavily flawed game that I just can't bring myself to agree is the best in the series. Hell, even if we're only counting 3D games, it's not even in my top 5. If we do eventually get the Sonic Adventure remakes that we've been asking for, I really hope that they put most of their effort into fixing Sonic Adventure 2. Make the Knuckles stages more open and less meteor herd, and unlock the Emerald Radar. Make Tails go faster and have a less annoying targeting sound. Use the modern voice actors, and for the love of God, revise the script with the Japanese version as the base. Though, still keep in the more iconic English lines for obvious reasons. Still, I'm doubtful we'll ever get those remakes. Back with Sega though, as I've mentioned multiple times, they were basically done. Until President Isao Okawa returned all of his shares that he acquired over the time as president to the company for free, which in turn, Sega sold to make desperate cash. How much money was this all worth? Something to the tune of 85 billion yen, or $731 million. Adjusted for inflation, that's $1.2 billion in today's money. This motherfucker gave Sega $1 billion. And to give you a clue of just how desperate Sega's situation was, that only barely helped them survive. This all happened immediately after the Sega Dreamcast was discontinued, which mind you was not too far away from the release of Sonic Adventure 2. Sega, through a borderline miracle, managed to do the impossible and not die. Still, and probably their smartest move in a while, they immediately made plans to move away from the first-party console race and become a third-party developer, leading to a flood of third-party Sega games on PS2, Xbox, and GameCube. Sure, they lost the console race, but they still wanted to be a heavy-hitting AAA game company with a wide variety of series under their belt. Boy, how times change. But what happens next is a story for another day, that I'm probably going to take a while to get out. For now, I think that we can learn something from this story. Even if you fuck up, I mean royally screw up, there's always gonna be some good that comes out of it, so long as you're willing to live and learn. I'm Sir Strongman, and that was the thing.